Hello, my name's AJ Goldsby. I'm a life master from Pensacola, Florida, and I wanted to bring you today a video on a game from by Paul Morphy. It was played in 1857. Just a quick personal note: I saw this game literally when I was about 8 or 9 years old. A friend showed me a chess book. One of the very first chess books I ever saw was a book about Paul Morphy's games. It wasn't mine; it belonged to a friend. And anyway, we went through a couple of the games in this book, and I remember this game very clearly. It left a tremendous impression upon me. In fact, at the time, it seemed more like sleight of hand than it did chess. I didn't understand much about the moves. I mean, I didn't really have a good grasp of chess then, but it certainly was an amazing game then. It's still an amazing game today. And I have a web page on this game, and I just recently updated. And since I was updating the web page, I thought, why not go ahead and do a video? In fact, actually, one of my fans and supporters had emailed me and suggested that idea. To be completely honest, it wasn't my idea initially. I mean, I thought about it several times, but he sent me an email and said, why not go ahead and while you're updating this page, let's go ahead and do a video on this particular game. But anyway, without any further ado, here's a game that was played at the First American Chess Congress in 1857. Theodor Lichtenhein was white and Paul Morphy was black. Of course, Paul Morphy was the first great American chess player, one of the greatest players ever. And it's generally conceded today that Morphy was so much further ahead of his generation of chess than any other player who maybe ever lived. And also in his day, many players did not have any real idea of how chess was supposed to be played. In fact, anecdotally anyway, supposedly Stein had studied the games of Morphy, and that is how we got our modern positional theories of chess. A lot of these things came from Steinnitz's study of Morphy's games. But anyway, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into this game. The first move here is e4. Of course, most of your chess games in the 1800s, and even before that, for about 100 years before, started off one pawn to king 4 or e4. e5. Of course, c5 today would be a Sicilian, but there weren't too many Sicilian players back in Paul Morphy's day. That was generally considered a cowardly opening. Back then, you have to understand, people didn't think about things objectively. They thought rather subjectively, and there was a lot of things like chivalry and that type of idea, and they applied these concepts not just to their lives but also to the game of chess as well. Knight f3, of course, that attacks e5, knight c6, d4, and black takes, and now white plays bishop c4. And this can come out of a Scotch opening. This could also arise by transposition out of the three bishop c4, which would be the Italian opening, or also a gioco piano is the correct way of saying that opening. And so there's many different ways that this could have come about. We could have obviously swapped a couple of moves about. I think this most commonly would be seen out of a two knights defense. Knight f6, e5. Basically, this is not a bad move, or at least not a bad idea. The idea is, white hopes to kick the black knight off of its f6 square. And, up to this point, all the moves had been, played before. And Morphy, I think, now really begins to shine. We begin to see a little bit of Morphy's genius. Morphy plays d5 exclam. Morphy he understood that you never retreat a well-posted piece. And instead of retreating his knight or moving the knight off the way, he hits the center, hits white's bishop on c4, and notice that the bishop on c4 is attacked. And also too that he's opening up his black side of the game. In other words, if pawn takes f6, d takes c4, and we actually could get a transposition in something called the Max Lange attack. But anyway, black plays d5, hitting the bishop. Bishop b5, knight e4, exclam again. Notice that Morphy didn't know the meaning of the word retreat. It was always go forward, and he sticks a knight immediately on an advanced square in the center on really an excellent outpost square. Knight takes d4, bishop d7. Now both Houdini and Fritz agree that white should capture here on the c6 square. Bishop takes c6 is the indicated move, following by castles for white. And you could probably say that position is equal or maybe a tiny bit better for white. However, white takes, knight takes c6. Black, of course, plays b takes c6, and now bishop to d3. Now, a lot of players, like, if I were white, rather black in this position, I would be tempted to play f5 here to continue to anchor my knight. Morphy understood that the most important thing, especially in open games, he was a real genius and a real master of open positions, was that time and tempo and speed of development. So he plays a developmental move. Of course, now both the knight on e4 and the bishop on c5 are striking this important f2 square. Okay, so rapid and active development, that was a big hallmark of Morphy's play. And notice now he has, threats against f2, which is, of course, the weakest square that white has on the chessboard at the start of the game. White plays the natural bishop takes e4, probably expecting Morphy simply to recapture, but Morphy plays queen h4. That's what's known as a Zwischenzug, or some people say Zwischenzug, but the correct pronunciation, I believe, is Zwischenzug. And it's an in-between move, and basically this will give Morphy a nice advantage. Now white plays queen e2. Mednis writes here that this is a perfectly reasonable move. White wants the black to capture on e4 with his pawn, and thus be left with a broken pawn structure on the queen side. After the more routine, white castles on a move 11, queen takes e4. Black has at no cost to himself the advantage of the bishop pair in an open position. He therefore has a very pleasant advantage. End of quotes. That's GM Edmar Mednis wrote that in one of his books. Of course, Mednis today has passed away, and he was a good person and also obviously a strong player. And I really enjoyed his very straightforward style of writing too. But anyway, queen e2, is a fairly reasonable move, at least on the face things. And now d takes e4, and now white plays bishop to e3. This looks fairly reasonable, but here white should have castled, and then after rook b8, according to ECO, black is slightly better probably for choice there. But anyway, white played bishop to e3. Again, it looks like a fairly reasonable move, or at least on the surface of things, it looks to be a fairly, natural move, developing the bishop, challenging that diagonal here. But Morphy plays bishop g4. Probably give that move a double exclam. It had to be calculated very exactly. The exact outcome of that move is probably certainly beyond the average player. And Morphy had to calculate several moves ahead, and of course calculate very accurately. White plays queen c4, that hits the bishop there. And Mednis again writes, white must counterattack since the safe queen d2 loses routinely to 13 rook d8 with mate on d1 coming up. So that's very true. That's very correct there. So, it's a pretty obvious strike. In other words, if the white queen had gone to d2, then simply rook d8 wins handily for black. So anyway, after bishop to g4, white plays queen c4. Appears to win material because it doesn't look like the black bishop can move because of the capture on c6, or at least that might be your first impression. Black goes ahead and plays bishop takes e3, fearlessly continuing the counterattack. Now here white plays g3, and that was correct. That was forced. There's actually a variation here, and normally in my videos I don't go too deeply into variations, but I think here it's correct because we just want to briefly at least explore this, because this is a fairly well-known continuation, and both Soltis and Reinfeld explored this. Queen takes c6, bishop to d7, that's a double exclam. Queen captures a8 check, king g7, g3. Obviously, if white saves the queen, say, then you have things like queen takes rook pawn, and he's in a huge amount of trouble there. So anyway, getting back, back to our analysis here, the correct move, the forced move according to computer, is g3 there. And then black plays bishop takes f2 check, exclam, king takes f2, e3 check. Now white can't capture the pawn, because if he does, black simply checks on, say, h6 or g5, and then white is going to lose his queen to the rook. So king e1, queen b4 check, c3, queen takes b2, queen e4, queen c1 check, bishop to b5 check, bishop takes c4 check, king f3, queen takes h1 check, king e3, queen e1 check, king f3, queen f1 check, king e3, queen e2 check, king f4, g5 check, king f5, bishop e6, king takes g5, queen takes e4. That's a fairly long variation, obviously. That's that's to move 30. That's like a variation that's literally 15 moves long. But apparently that's all forced, and that's what could have happened to white, in the other line had he have taken on c6. Of course, I'm not even sure if Morphy would have found all those moves, because that's all basically computer analysis. But anyway, just go back to the actual game here, just to recap here. After bishop to g4, white played queen c4 here. Black took on e3, very daring move. Had to be calculated very correctly. You couldn't have any mistakes here. g3 exclam, again, that was forced. Queen d8. Now, some people criticize this move. I actually like this move. I think black could have won with the more routine, the kind of moribund queen h6 here, but it doesn't involve checkmates and all the various threats to the white king. And I really like Morphy's move here. If I had to choose between the two moves, of course, if a computer has to choose, then naturally it's going to play a move like queen h6, because this is simply going to allow black to win on the point scale, and that's what the computers always do. However, Morphy's move here is a very nice, very finesse move. He's threatening, for example, if, black plays a move like a3, then queen d1 check mate is the threat there. And of course, if white simply castles, then bishop b6, and now black is ahead of piece. So anyway, queen d8, then we get f takes e3, queen d1 check, king f2, queen f3 check, exclam. I believe it was, a New York reporter here wrote that white was probably expecting Morphy to capture the rook on h1 here. Of course, Morphy disappoints him and surprises him. King g1, this is all forced. Bishop h3, double exclam. Black continues to prosecute his attack. Much less accurate as queen takes e3 check. Bishop h3, queen takes c6 check. King f8, that's a very good move. King e7 allows a little bit of counterplay, because after queen takes c7 check on move 19, here check, and now white's getting counterplay. So, rather than allow that after the move queen takes c6, king f8, that's an exclam, or maybe even a double exclam, because basically the idea is the rook gets to capture, white gets to capture the rook, queen takes a8 check, but now king e7, and there's the rub, is that if white takes a rook on f8, then he gets mated on g2. In fact, other than playing giveaway and playing queen takes pawn on e4 and giving away his queen basically for nothing, white has no way of stopping the mate on g2. In fact, after queen takes pawn on e4, black could simply play queen f1 checkmate. So there's actually two mating threats there, and also there's the mate threat of queen takes e3 mate as well. So there's actually three mate threats there. So anyway, that pretty much concludes my coverage of this game. As I said, I just recently, in fact, just today, I updated my webpage, and why not go ahead and do a video on this game too, which is, I think, a good idea. One day I would like to have videos for all my web pages. Of course, that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time, but maybe eventually one day I'll get there. But anyway, and also too, I do have a web page on this game, and I will make sure that I post a link for the web page. And just below the video box, there's a little box that says show more. I'll make sure I post the link for my web page in that little box that says show more, so that you can visit the web page. My web page is very thorough. It analyzes pretty much all the main possibilities there, and you can check that out if you like. And also too, there's some very good kibitzers on the Chess Games website have posted a lot of computer analysis of this game. So you, by all means, if you're really interested in the truth about this game, you should definitely check out the Chess Games website and the computer analysis posted there. Not all of that is mine. In fact, much of it is not mine. And also too, make sure you check out my webpage. And I would like to ask you that if you really enjoy my web pages and you'd like to make a contribution to my efforts to make great chess videos and make great web pages as well about chess, that you go to the PayPal website, www.paypal.com, and make a contribution under my email address, which is LifeMasterAJ@yahoo.com. Well, thanks a lot for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, I didn't go into too much analysis here in the video because I kind of wanted to do sort of a color commentary and just review of the game quickly and not make the video too terribly long. And again, I have a web page where I do analyze a lot of the the different possibilities and alternatives there. And I just recently, in fact, just today, I updated that webpage. So thank you for watching my video and have a great day.